The air trembled with the hum of air conditioners and the echo of hundreds of footsteps. Bright banners flapped above the glass towers of Riverside Plaza, the brand-new $47 million shopping mall, a monument of greed and arrogance, and I was standing right in front of it. Security guards eyed me as if I didn't belong here, but I just smiled, because this massive empire of marble glass and LED screens was built on my land. No lease, no permission, not even a phone call. They paved over the pond where my uncle used to fish, bulldozed the walnut trees he planted in 1978, and called it community progress. The HOA president, Amelia Davis, bragged on TV about reviving the neighborhood economy. She had no idea the ground beneath her precious mall was mine, legally, permanently, and with taxes paid every single year. I could have stopped them from day one, but my lawyer whispered, "Let them build, let them finish." So I waited. Quietly, patiently. Because revenge isn't always about anger, sometimes it's about timing. Before we begin, drop a comment with your city and local time, and make sure to subscribe because you won't believe how this one ends. I wasn't supposed to come back to Maple Creek that spring. It had been 4 years since I'd last driven the old county road that led to my Uncle Raymond's land, now my land. After his funeral, I couldn't bring myself to return. The house was gone, the barn rotted down to ribs, and I didn't want to stand there hearing ghosts in the wind. But that April morning, I came back for one reason: to scatter Uncle Raymond's ashes near the walnut grove he planted in 1978. The GPS told me to turn right at a new intersection, but the road didn't look familiar. Wide asphalt traffic lights and shiny street lamps. The dirt path I remembered was gone. I thought I took the wrong turn until I saw the massive sign, Riverside Plaza, a Whitmore HOA development. My heart dropped into my stomach. I pulled over at the curb, staring at the monstrosity in front of me. Steel skeletons, cranes, and workers in neon vests filled the horizon. The air smelled of asphalt and paint. A 3-story parking deck towered where my uncle's cabin used to be. I stumbled out of my truck, holding the urn in one hand, disbelief in the other. A security guard whistled. "Hey, this area's restricted." "Construction zone, I own this property," I said. My voice cracked a little. The guard chuckled. "Yeah, sure you do. Everyone says that when they get lost." He reached for his radio, but before he could speak, another voice cut through the noise. "Is there a problem here?" She was impossible to miss, mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde hair, diamond studs that caught the sun, and a pink blazer that probably cost more than my truck. She carried herself like she owned the world. "I'm Amelia Davis," she said, "president of the Meadow Ridge Homeowners Association." "You are Charles Moore," I replied. "And this land, these 12 acres, belong to me." She laughed softly, as if I had told a charming joke. "I'm afraid you're mistaken, Mr. Moore. This land was unoccupied for years. Our HOA secured development rights under adverse possession." I stared at her. "Adverse possession? You mean you think you can just take it because no one was living here?" "Exactly," she said, smiling like a teacher rewarding a child. "You really should have paid attention to your property taxes." "I did," I said. "Every year. I have the receipts." Her smile froze. Then she adjusted her sunglasses. "Well, the county disagrees. The land was zoned for community redevelopment. It's ours now. In fact, 15 major retailers have already signed 10-year leases." She gestured toward the rising structure. $47 million in contracts. "You should be proud your uncle's useless field finally has value." I clenched the urn tighter. "You bulldozed his trees." She tilted her head, almost bored. "Sentimental attachments don't hold up in court, Mr. Moore." Then she raised her phone, snapping a picture of my license plate. "You're trespassing on private HOA property. I'll have to report this." "Private?" I laughed bitterly. "Lady, this dirt is older than your HOA." "Older than you." Her tone hardened. "Then maybe you should have built something before we did." I wanted to argue, scream, do something, but the sound of jackhammers drowned me out. I drove home with the image burned in my mind, cranes swinging above the land my uncle had sworn would stay in our family forever. That night I didn't sleep. I laid out every paper I had. Deeds, tax, receipts, maps from 1978 to now sprawled across my kitchen table like battle plans. The deed had my name in black ink, notarized clean with no liens or transfers. Every tax bill since 1978 had been paid, and there tucked inside a faded envelope was a handwritten note from Uncle Raymond. "Don't let them take what we built with honest sweat." My phone buzzed the next morning. A lawyer named Brian Kemp from the HOA had left a voicemail. "Mr. Moore, the association would like to make a goodwill offer $25,000 for a quitclaim deed. Let's settle this quietly. It'll save everyone time. $25,000 for 12 acres of prime commercial land. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped my coffee. Then I saved the voicemail and forwarded it to my personal drive. 2 hours later, I called a friend of mine from college, a property attorney named Rebecca Torres. Rebecca listened patiently as I explained everything: the mall, the guards, the offer, Amelia's arrogance. She didn't interrupt once. When I finished, there was a long silence. Then she said one sentence that changed everything. They've already lost Charles. They just don't know it yet. She explained that under Colorado law, adverse possession requires at least 18 years of continuous open and hostile occupancy and payment of property taxes. The HOA had done neither. They're bluffing, she said. They built on your land believing you wouldn't notice or that you'd settle. But since you've been paying taxes, the entire development is technically an illegal encroachment. I rubbed my temples. So we can sue them now, we could, she said. But I have a better idea. Her voice dropped, deliberate and calm. Let them build. Let them finish. The more they build, the higher the value of the property you own. Once it's complete, we file a claim. You'll own a $47 million mall legally. I was silent for a moment. You're serious. Completely. But this only works if you play dead. No public fights. No Facebook rants. No letters. You disappear and let them think they've won. I nodded slowly, already feeling the burn of revenge beginning to take shape. Rebecca continued, "We'll prepare everything quietly. Deeds, surveys, tax proofs, time-stamped records. When the time comes, we'll strike. The court will see clear ownership and reckless trespass. And since you've been paying taxes, the HOA will have to pay you. Possibly millions." I exhaled slowly. "How much will this cost?" $45,000 in fees, she said. "But when we win, they reimburse every cent." That night I set 2 rules for myself. Never speak to Amelia Davis again. Never post a single word online about the mall. I was done reacting. From now on, I would observe, record, wait. I started driving out twice a week, pretending to be a curious local. I wore a baseball cap, sunglasses, and a neutral smile. I parked on the public road camera, rolling GPS timestamp on. I captured every crane, every truck delivery, every new foundation slab. They were pouring millions into my soil. Sometimes I imagined Uncle Raymond sitting beside me in the truck, grinning that crooked grin. Let 'em dig, kid. Every inch they dig makes it harder for them to crawl out. As weeks passed, the mall began to take shape, a fortress of commerce rising higher each time I returned. And every time I reminded myself, patience isn't weakness, it's a weapon. The day I left the urn by the Walnut Grove stump, I made a silent promise to the old man. "They'll pay you back, Uncle. Every damn dollar of it." I drove off that evening with the sunset behind the steel skeletons, their shadows stretching across what was still in every legal sense my land. And for the first time in years I felt calm, not because I had peace, but because I finally had a plan. The next morning I woke before sunrise, made a pot of strong coffee, and cleared every inch of my kitchen table. What used to hold blueprints and drafting tools now became a war room. I spread every document across the surface: deed survey, tax receipts, correspondence with the county clerk. The old paper smelled faintly of dust and ink, the scent of something righteous and stubborn that refused to die. Rebecca arrived around 9, hair tied back, laptop under her arm, expression sharp and unflinching. She wasn't the type to smile when things got interesting, she smirked. That morning she smirked a lot. She ran her fingers across the deed from 1,978. Notarized, sealed, and indexed. "That's gold," she murmured. Then she flipped through the tax receipts. Paid, 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 paid. Her eyes flicked up. "You've kept this up every year. Every damn year. Even when I didn't come here." She nodded, impressed. "They built on land that's not theirs, Charles. And they left a paper trail wide enough to drive a bulldozer through." She tapped on her laptop, pulling up the county's public development portal. "Look here, they applied for construction permits under parcel ID 4427BEAST, but your parcel is 4427B. The east suffix doesn't exist. They made up a sub-parcel so they could trick the zoning review." I leaned forward. "You're telling me they forged paperwork?" "Not exactly forged," she said. "They interpreted it. Someone inside the HOA probably used an outdated rezoning map and convinced the county clerk to sign off without verifying the legal boundaries. It's bureaucratic fraud disguised as paperwork error, the oldest trick in development scams." I shook my head in disbelief. "And Amelia Davis is behind this." Rebecca's grin sharpened. "She's the president, but she didn't act alone. Her husband Preston Davis owns a shell LLC called Ridgeline Capital. They're the ones funding the project. They fronted it as an HOA expansion to get community exemptions, but it's really a private investment deal. They get the profit, the HOA gets the blame if it collapses. My jaw tightened. So they risked $40+ million on land they don't own, because they assumed you'd never show up. I stared out the window at the pine trees swaying beyond my yard. They thought this was abandoned, that I'd never notice, that I'd just roll over and take the check Rebecca finished. I nodded slowly. Well, they're about to learn the hard way what happens when you build on someone else's dirt. Rebecca closed her laptop. Then here's the plan, we let them keep digging. I frowned. You're serious, completely, she said. Think of it like chess. If we strike now, they'll claim a clerical error stall for years, maybe settle cheap. But if they finish construction, if the mall opens, if tenants move in, you don't just own a piece of dirt anymore. You own every brick, every tile, every dollar poured into it. It becomes your asset. And then Charles, she leaned back, arms crossed. You let the law do what it does best, destroy arrogance. Her calmness was unnerving. How do we pull this off? Documentation, she said. Every visit you make, take photos time-stamped. Record audio of any conversations. Keep the tax bills, and don't under any circumstance talk to Amelia again. If she contacts you, send it straight to me. I scribbled notes as she spoke. How long before we file? When the construction's about 90% done. At that point, the damages are undeniable. She pushed a contract across the table. My retainer is $45,000. But if we win, and we will, they'll pay it back, along with court costs, interest, and punitive damages. I signed without hesitation. That night I drove to the property again. The site looked even larger under the floodlights, acres of concrete glowing like bones under the moon. Cranes loomed against the sky and workers welded steel in showers of sparks. It was beautiful in a twisted way. They were building their own downfall brick by brick. A week later, Rebecca called. I've got something. She forwarded a document, an HOA board meeting transcript. Someone had leaked it anonymously. Amelia's voice was recorded saying, "It's abandoned land. Even if he shows up, he'll never have the resources to fight. We can buy him out for pennies." Rebecca chuckled. "We'll keep that for court." Over the next 3 months, I lived a double life. By day, I worked remotely for my architecture firm, keeping my head down. By night, I became a shadow around Riverside Plaza, camera in hand, always parked on the county road where the law couldn't touch me. I cataloged everything, deliveries, invoices left on pallets, license plates of contractors, even timestamps of when lights turned on and off. Every detail became another nail in their legal coffin. One afternoon, a foreman yelled from the fence, "You filming for the city or something?" "Just a hobby," I said with a smile. He shrugged. "Hope you like malls, buddy. This one's gonna be a beauty." I laughed under my breath. "Oh, I will." In June, Amelia spotted me again. She stormed out of her SUV heels, clicking like gunshots on the pavement. "Still hanging around Mr. Moore, looking for a job. We're hiring janitors." I raised my phone, the camera already rolling. "Just recording progress. After all, I have a personal interest in the property." Her face twitched. "You're obsessed," maybe I said. "But obsession's how you win court cases." She pointed a manicured finger at me. "You'll regret this." I smiled. "Not as much as you will." That was the last time we spoke. Rebecca's advice replayed in my head, "Silence is your armor." So I stayed quiet, even when friends asked why I kept driving to that construction site, even when the local paper ran glowing headlines like "HOA brings jobs to Maple Creek." They could have their spotlight. I had something better evidence. By late August, the structure was complete. Glass walls reflected the sky, fountains bubbled under strings of fairy lights. A massive banner stretched across the entrance, "Grand Opening, October 10. Rebecca's email came that evening, 2 weeks before opening. "We file next Friday." The timing was surgical. She wanted the shockwave to hit just as the investors were preparing their ribbon cutting. I stood on the ridge that night, looking down at the mall lights, flickering against the dark fields. The sound of generators hummed like distant thunder. "They built a monument to arrogance," I whispered to the empty air, "and every inch of it belongs to me." I drove home, locked the documents in a fireproof safe, and sent Rebecca one final message. "I'm ready." She replied instantly, "Good, because next week we pull the trigger." At that moment, I realized something important. Revenge doesn't always feel like fire. Sometimes it feels like gravity, slow, inevitable, unstoppable. I turned off the light, lay in bed, and smiled for the first time in months, because tomorrow the countdown began. I learned quickly that patience wasn't a virtue, it was a weapon. For the next 3 months, I lived like a ghost hovering around Riverside Plaza. Twice a week, I drove down County Road 47 with my camera rolling, parked at the same gravel turnout overlooking the site, and documented everything. Every slab poured, every delivery truck that crossed the property line, every for-lease banner Amelia Davis proudly hung on the chain-link fence. Rebecca had drilled the plan into my head. The longer they think you're harmless, the higher they build your trophy. Still, pretending to be indifferent wasn't easy. Every time I saw the mall rise higher, I felt a knot twist in my chest. That was Uncle Raymond's Grove, where we used to sit on old stumps and sip coffee from a thermos while watching deer. Now it was a parking lot for a Target store. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the truck window and barely recognize myself, eyes tired, jaw locked, haunted by silent fury. But Rebecca kept me focused. Don't get emotional, Charles. Get evidence. By late July, the project was transforming from chaos into something disturbingly polished. The big retailers had moved in: Target, Best Buy, PetSmart, Olive Garden, and a half-dozen boutique outlets. Construction crews were replaced by landscapers and electricians wiring the neon signs. The entire site glowed at night like a small city, and Amelia Davis was everywhere. I'd see her strutting through the plaza in her pink power suits, talking to investors, posing for photos beside banners that read, "A Vision of Community." She gave interviews to local TV stations about reclaiming underused land for progress. I saved every clip. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with an alert: Amelia Davis to host Investor Gala, September 20. The invitation sent to half the county called Riverside Plaza a shining example of HOA leadership and resilience. I had to laugh. Resilience. They were standing on a time bomb, and I was the one holding the detonator. Rebecca called that evening. Let her host it. Let her celebrate. The louder she brags, the harder she'll fall. And so I went. I dressed simply: navy, shirt, jeans, ball cap, and walked among the crowd like an anonymous investor. The gala was pure spectacle: champagne fountains, spotlights, live jazz echoing off the glass walls. Amelia stood on stage, microphone in hand, the queen of her own illusion. 4 years ago, she declared this land was abandoned, forgotten, but through determination and vision, Meadow Ridge HOA has turned it into a hub of prosperity. We've created jobs, opportunity, and pride. The audience applauded. I simply raised my phone and recorded. Her husband Preston joined her on stage, gray suit, white smile, the perfect image of a corporate gentleman. He wrapped an arm around her and said, "Our family risked everything to make this dream real. We even sold our own home to invest in this community's future." The crowd gasped admiringly. I smirked. Selling your home for someone else's land now, that's commitment to stupidity. As I slipped out into the cool night, I spotted one of the investors shaking hands with Amelia, saying, "You've built a legacy, Miss Davis." She smiled. "Oh, it's just the beginning." The next morning, I forwarded the video to Rebecca. "This," she said, "is gold. It shows public claim of ownership on camera. Intent, arrogance, and false representation, everything we need to prove deliberate fraud." The following weeks were a blur of anticipation. Rebecca worked around the clock, filing the ownership documents, cross-referencing county maps, and drafting the lawsuit. She warned me not to celebrate yet. Timing is key. If we strike too soon, they'll claim confusion. Too late, they'll try to flip the property. We'll hit them just before opening day. October 10, I reminded her. She grinned. Then October 1, we ruined their year. Meanwhile, Amelia was ramping up her PR campaign. Billboards popped up across the county: Riverside Plaza, a beacon of renewal. She posted daily updates on Facebook and LinkedIn, bragging about her visionary leadership. Local papers ran puff pieces calling her the woman who built Maple Creek's future. Every word of it made me grind my teeth, but I kept quiet, because I knew the future she built was already mine. Then around mid-September, she noticed me again. I was parked near the main entrance, taking my usual time-stamped footage, when a black Range Rover screeched to a halt beside me. Amelia stepped out, heels clicking hard against the pavement. "Still haunting us, mister." "More," she sneered. "You know obsession isn't healthy. Neither is fraud," I said, keeping my camera rolling. Her jaw tightened. "You really think anyone will believe you? The county approved our permits. The state cut the ribbons. You're just a bitter old man waving around a piece of paper from the 70s. I shrugged. "Guess we'll find out who owns what soon enough." She glared at me, then leaned closer, perfume sickly sweet. "You're finished, Charles. You just don't know it yet." As she walked away, I smiled to myself. "Funny," I murmured. I was about to say the same thing. That was the last time she spoke to me face to face. A week later, Rebecca called with the words I'd been waiting for. "It's done. The filings are ready. Title chain confirmed taxes, paid surveys authenticated. We're submitting on Friday. Friday, September 23900 a.m. She hit submit while I was on the phone. The sound of her keyboard tapping felt like thunder. It's official, she said. They've been served. The effect was immediate. 2 days later, local headlines exploded. $47 million mall built on disputed property ownership in question. News vans swarmed the site. Investors panicked. Tenants called their lawyers. And Amelia Davis, she went silent for 48 hours, then re-emerged with fury. Her press statement called me a disgruntled opportunist, exploiting a clerical error. But the damage was already done. Rebecca chuckled. Let her talk. Every word is defamation fuel. By the following week, HOA meetings turned chaotic. Leaked recordings revealed board members screaming at Amelia and Preston, accusing them of dragging everyone into financial ruin. And on October 1, just 9 days before their grand opening, the Boulder County Court officially issued the injunction. All commercial activity at Riverside Plaza suspended pending ownership review. Rebecca showed me the stamped order in her office, her eyes gleaming. It's over. They can't sell, can't open, can't even advertise without risking contempt of court. I sat back in my chair, exhaling deeply. Months of rage, fear, and silence finally had direction. They'll retaliate, I said quietly. Oh, they already are, Rebecca replied. They hired 3 new lawyers. Expect them to smear you in the media. It's all they have left. I smirked. Good. The louder they scream, the guiltier they'll look. And they did scream. The HOA launched a Facebook campaign painting me as a vulture investor trying to steal a community project. Amelia gave one last TV interview, visibly shaking behind her practiced smile, insisting Mr. Moore's claims are exaggerated and will be dismissed. But the fear in her eyes told the truth. Because she knew what I knew, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a reckoning. That night, I drove out to the ridge one last time before the storm hit. The mall shimmered under the floodlights, empty but gleaming like a monument to hubris. I sat in silence watching as wind rippled across the half-finished parking lots. They think this is the end, I whispered to the ghost of my uncle. But it's just intermission. And as the first drops of rain began to fall, I started my truck headlights cutting through the darkness and drove home to wait for the real war, the courtroom kind. Because the difference between patience and victory is only time. The storm I'd been waiting for finally broke, but not the way I expected. 2 days after the injunction hit, I woke up to 46 missed notifications. My phone was buzzing like it was alive. Facebook, Twitter, even LinkedIn, my name was everywhere. The first post I saw stopped me cold. Warning. Local man Charles Moore caught taking photos of children near Riverside Plaza construction site. Please report sightings. Number Stop Charles Moore. Number Protect Our Community. The post came straight from Amelia Davis's account. Her face sat in the profile picture, smiling, confident, righteous. The post had already racked up 450 shares in 6 hours. My stomach turned. The comments were worse. Creep should be arrested. He's dangerous. Can't believe this guy's allowed near schools. I sat at my kitchen table, heart pounding, watching my reputation burn in real time. Amelia wasn't fighting me in court. She was trying to destroy me in public. 10 minutes later, my daughter Emma called, her voice trembling. Dad, what's going on? People are saying you're being investigated. Did you do something? I closed my eyes. No, sweetheart, it's a lie. She's trying to scare me. But my friends are messaging me. Someone posted your picture at the mall. Are you in trouble? No, I said firmly. She's the one who's in trouble, and she just made her biggest mistake. That afternoon, I drove to the police station and filed a formal report for harassment and defamation. The desk sergeant, a weary man named Patterson, sighed as he took my statement. You know how it is with social media, Mr. Moore. Hard to prove intent. She accused me of photographing children, I said coldly. That's criminal defamation. I want it on record. He shrugged, typing lazily. Sure thing. We'll note it down. Outside, I saw Amelia's Range Rover parked across the street. She was sitting inside, sunglasses on, a smirk playing across her lips. She raised her phone as I walked by, snapping a photo. That night, someone spray-painted liar across my garage door in dripping red letters. I spent the next morning scrubbing it off while my neighbors avoided eye contact. People who used to wave now turned their heads. The local paper ran an anonymous letter to the editor calling me a vindictive man exploiting loopholes to ruin a community. Rebecca called around noon. I saw the post. Don't react. Don't post anything. Let me handle this. She's slandering me publicly, I snapped. What's the point of silence now? The point, Rebecca said, voice calm as steel, is that she's panicking. They're losing control, and when people panic, they expose themselves. Every post she makes digs her hole deeper. I gripped the phone, breathing hard. So what do? We build our case, she said, and we document everything. For the next week, that's exactly what we did. I took screenshots of every post, every comment, every shared link. Rebecca compiled them into a defamation folder, time-stamped, certified, backed up in triplicate. But the damage was spreading. My boss at the architecture firm called me into a video meeting. He looked uncomfortable. Charles, this situation with the HOA, it's drawing attention. The school district contract is concerned about your image. We're placing you on paid leave until your case resolves. Paid leave, I repeated flatly. That's a polite way of saying you're a liability. He winced. It's temporary. I ended the call without saying goodbye. That night, my son David called from Denver. Dad, I know you're fighting for what's right, but is it worth it? This Amelia lady sounds crazy. She's not crazy, I said quietly. She's calculated, and she's used to getting away with it. I hung up and stared at the note Uncle Raymond had left me taped to the fridge. Don't let them take what we built with honest sweat. The words felt heavier than ever. Then things got darker. Emma came home from work, pale and shaking. Dad, I got a message. She handed me her phone. It was a text from an unknown number. Tell your father to drop the lawsuit or we'll make sure none of you walk away clean. I felt the blood drain from my face. When did you get this? An hour ago. I took screenshots, then called Rebecca immediately. They're escalating, I said. Good, she replied, without missing a beat. Threats prove intent. Forward everything to me. Good, I said incredulously. They're threatening my daughter. Which means, she said calmly, they're desperate. You're closer than you think. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room with a baseball bat across my lap, listening to every creak and gust of wind outside. The once peaceful house now felt like a bunker. By morning, I'd made up my mind I wasn't just going to defend myself anymore. I was going to destroy them. Rebecca called at 7:00 a.m. We have the court hearing next week. Be ready. They'll try to dismiss the case on technical grounds. I'm ready, I said. But Rebecca, if they cross another line, I'm not waiting for the court. I'll call the state attorney. You won't need to, she said. I've got something that'll bury them. But I need you calm in court. Calm, I repeated. Sure. The following days felt like walking through a war zone made of gossip. HOA supporters stalked my social media strangers, left voicemails calling me a thief, and one morning, I found a dead crow in my mailbox. I photographed it, bagged it, and sent it to the sheriff's office. Deputy Martinez, the only cop who seemed to care, came by to check. They're pushing you, Mr. Moore, he said, taking notes. Don't give them what they want. They already took my peace, I said quietly. Now I'm taking their future. 3 nights before the hearing, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. This time it wasn't a text, it was a video message. I hesitated, then pressed play. The screen showed a gloved hand holding a note. The words scrawled in red marker, drop the case or you'll regret it. Then the camera panned down to a photo of me and Emma at her college graduation. I froze. My hands trembled so hard, I nearly dropped the phone. I forwarded the video to Rebecca immediately. Within 5 minutes, she called. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the anger beneath. Perfect. Bring that phone to court. This is intimidation. It strengthens our case. Strengthens, I said, almost laughing. They're threatening my family. Exactly. Which means they're finished. Her tone softened. Charles, this is their last move before the collapse. They always try to scare the victim into backing off. Don't. Keep breathing, keep quiet, and show up on Monday looking calm. So I did. The night before the hearing, I sat on the porch, bathed in the hum of cicadas and the faint light of the moon. I watched the shadows of trees sway across the field that once belonged to my uncle. Somewhere beyond that ridge stood the mall, lit empty, useless. A $47 million ghost waiting for its reckoning. I whispered into the dark. They think I'm scared, Uncle, but tomorrow we start collecting. Then I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and finally slept for the first time in weeks. Because in the morning we were heading to Boulder County Court. And for the first time, Amelia Davis wouldn't be facing a rumor or a post. She'd be facing the truth under oath. The morning of the hearing dawned gray and sharp, the kind of cold that made the air bite. I woke before my alarm, put on the only suit I owned, the navy one I'd worn at Emma's college graduation 3 years ago, and stood in front of the mirror. I didn't look like a man going to war, but that's exactly what I was doing. Outside the Boulder County Courthouse, the parking lot buzzed with reporters, lawyers, and too many curious faces. News of the Riverside Plaza ownership scandal had drawn cameras like flies to a wound. A Channel 9 van idled by the steps. The moment I stepped out of my truck, someone shouted, "Mr. More. Is it true the HOA built on your land? I ignored them and walked toward the entrance, clutching my folder of documents like a shield. Inside, Rebecca was waiting, calm, immaculate, black suit, red lipstick eyes, gleaming with the kind of confidence I was still trying to borrow. You ready? She asked. I nodded. Been ready for 6 months. We entered the courtroom at 8:45 a.m. sharp. The sound of shuffling papers and clicking heels filled the air. The opposing table was a spectacle of arrogance, 3 attorneys in $1,000 suits, a stack of leather binders taller than a child, and in the middle Amelia Davis herself. She looked every bit the queen fallen from grace, expensive navy blazer, pearl earrings, posture straight, smile frozen. Beside her sat her husband Preston Davis, a tall man in his 60s with slick-back silver hair and the kind of smirk that only people with too many lawyers can manage. Amelia's gaze met mine across the room. She smiled slow and smug as if to say, "You'll never win." But then the bailiff called the courtroom to order. All rise for the Honorable Judge Angela Ramirez. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair, sharp eyes, and absolutely no patience for theatrics. Her reputation was legendary in the county. Direct, ruthless, allergic to nonsense. We took our seats. The HOA's lead attorney, Brian Kemp, stood first. He launched into his argument like a man used to winning before he even began. Your Honor, this case is a simple misunderstanding inflated into a spectacle. The HOA acted in good faith, based on public zoning maps, showing the parcel in question as part of our development area. Mr. 50. Moore is attempting to exploit a clerical error for financial gain. Rebecca leaned toward me. Watch this, she whispered. Judge Ramirez raised an eyebrow. Mr. Kemp, did your clients verify ownership through the county deed registry before construction? Kemp hesitated. Well, the mapping system. Answer the question, counsel. No, Your Honor. Her tone cut like a knife. Then this isn't a misunderstanding, it's negligence. Kemp flushed. Even so, Your Honor, we have filed a motion to dismiss. The plaintiff's claim lacks sufficient evidence of continuous ownership. The land appeared abandoned for Rebecca stood. Objection, Your Honor. Grounds. Rebecca smiled faintly. Grounds property taxes. My client paid them every single year for 44 years, including the last 4, when the HOA claims the land was abandoned. We've included receipts, checks, and county acknowledgments in Exhibit B. Judge Ramirez flipped through the folder Rebecca handed over. Her eyebrows rose. Mr. Kemp, is this accurate? He stammered. It appears so, but then the claim of abandonment fails, the judge said flatly. Under Colorado statute, adverse possession requires 18 years of continuous occupancy and tax payments by the possessor. Your clients meet neither. Kemp's jaw clenched. We request time to denied. Proceed. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Amelia's smirk vanished. Preston scribbled something angrily on a notepad. Rebecca let the silence linger, then rose again. Her voice was calm, measured, but each word landed like a hammer. Your Honor, we are not here over confusion. We are here because the defendants deliberately built a $47 million commercial complex on land they knew they did not own. They attempted to bury my client in legal fees and intimidation tactics while profiting from property that was never theirs. Kemp shot up. Objection, unfounded accusations. Judge Ramirez tilted her head. Do you have proof of intent, Miss Torres? Rebecca smiled, slow and surgical. Yes, Your Honor. Exhibit A. She walked to the clerk's desk, handed over a printed email chain, and waited as the bailiff distributed copies. Kemp's face drained of color. Amelia turned to her husband, whispering furiously. Preston's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. Judge Ramirez adjusted her glasses and read aloud. From Preston Davis. To Amelia Davis. The 14th of March, 2022. The courtroom fell silent. Then she continued. Charles Moore technically owns the parcel. Adverse possession likely won't hold. But if we move fast, confusion will stall him. Once construction's underway, he'll settle cheap or drown in legal costs. It worked in Aspen 2020, risk moderate. Reward $47M. The sound of pens dropping gasps and whispers filled the room. Rebecca folded her arms. That's not clerical confusion, Your Honor. That's calculated fraud. Judge Ramirez's eyes narrowed. Mr. Kemp, is this email authentic? Kemp's voice faltered. Your Honor, we need time to verify. Is the sender address valid? He hesitated. Yes, but context. She cut him off. The context is self-evident. She turned to Amelia and Preston. Do either of you deny sending or receiving this email? Preston opened his mouth, then closed it. Amelia shifted in her seat, pale under the courtroom lights. "I'll take that as a no," the judge said coldly. Rebecca stepped forward. "We move that the court deny the defense's motion to dismiss and issue an immediate injunction preventing further use, sale, or leasing of the property known as Riverside Plaza." Judge Ramirez nodded once. "Granted. Effective immediately. All HOA operations related to the site are to cease pending further trial." Kemp protested weakly. "Your Honor, we Mr. Kemp," she interrupted, voice like gravel. "I've had enough of excuses. If another defamatory post about this case appears online, I will hold your client, Mrs. Davis, in contempt of court." "Is that clear?" "Yes, Your Honor," he muttered. Rebecca wasn't done. She looked the judge square in the eye. "There's one more thing, Your Honor. That email didn't come from Discovery. It came from a whistleblower, a former business partner of Mr. Davis. He was involved in a similar land fraud scheme in Aspen 3 years ago. He's ready to testify." For a split second, the room froze. Then chaos erupted, Amelia gasping, Preston slamming his hand on the table, Kemp shouting for order. Judge Ramirez banged her gavel. Enough. The courtroom fell silent again. She glared at the defendants. "It seems this case is far more serious than property boundaries. We're moving this to expedited trial." Rebecca gave me a small nod. It was the first time in months I saw her actually smile. When the hearing ended, Amelia walked out quickly, surrounded by her lawyers, her expression cracking under the camera's flash. Preston followed, face red, with fury, shouting at Kemp under his breath. Reporters swarmed the hallway. One shoved a microphone toward me. "Mr. Cland." "More. What do you say to the claim that the HOA knowingly built on your property?" I met the camera squarely. "They didn't build on my property," I said. "They built on their mistake." Rebecca laughed softly as we walked away. "Nice line," she said. "Mind if I use that in court?" Outside, I breathed in the cold air, feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't defending myself. I was winning. Rebecca turned to me as we reached the steps. "You know what happens next," I nodded. "They'll come harder. They always do." She smiled grimly. "Good. Let them try. We just buried their first lie. Next we dig up the rest." And as the cameras flashed behind us, I realized Amelia's empire wasn't collapsing because of rage or revenge. It was collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. For the first time in half a year, I drove home from court smiling. The kind of smile that doesn't come from happiness but from the quiet satisfaction of watching a dam finally crack. Amelia and Preston Davis had built their empire on lies, and Rebecca had just slipped the crowbar between the bricks. But we both knew that one email, no matter how incriminating, was only the beginning. The Davis duo wasn't the type to accept defeat. They were the type to double down. 2 days later, Rebecca called me to her office in Denver. When I arrived, her conference table looked like a crime scene for corporate greed: folders, spreadsheets, photographs, and a whiteboard covered in red ink, connecting names, dates, and shell company logos. "Welcome to the web," she said, sipping coffee. "Turns out Riverside Plaza isn't their first con." She pointed at the board. 6 property names were written across the top: Aspen Ridge Canyon Creek Estates, Willow Park Lofts, Silverline Trails, Oak Haven, and Riverside Plaza. Every single one of these projects was tied to the Davises or their associates, she explained. Each time they formed an LLC, lobbied county clerks for rezoning, used HOA status to bypass environmental review, and this is my favorite part, filed partial ownership claims on unoccupied parcels adjacent to legitimate land. They make confusion, build fast, and sell before anyone catches on. My stomach sank. "So this has been going on for years, 10 to be exact," Rebecca said. "They even got away with it in Aspen, settled quietly for $3 million, and sealed the records. But your case? It's different. You have taxes, time, and that email. That's the holy trinity of proof." I crossed my arms. "So what's our next move?" She leaned forward. "We don't just sue for encroachment. We go federal." I blinked. "Federal RICO," she said, smiling like a predator. "Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's what the government uses to go after mobsters and corporate fraud rings. If we can prove a pattern of intentional deception across multiple projects, this becomes a criminal enterprise. They won't just lose money, they'll lose everything." I exhaled slowly. "You think we can pull that off?" Rebecca tapped the whiteboard. "We already have the roadmap. All we need now is exposure and allies." That's when she brought up the name Patricia Hughes, an investigative reporter from Channel 9, famous for taking down corrupt developers and winning 2 Emmys for it. "She's been digging into the Davises for months," Rebecca said. "We collaborate, share evidence, and let her broadcast the truth. Public pressure will box them in faster than any motion I can file. I hesitated. You're suggesting we go public. Not you, she corrected. Us. She'll handle the story. You just tell the truth. The following week, Patricia drove down to my ranch with her cameraman. She was sharp early 40s, denim jacket, confident posture, a mind that never stopped recording. We sat at my kitchen table surrounded by papers and old photos of Uncle Raymond, the land surveys, and the fated deed. She asked me to tell everything from the beginning. I did every trespass, every arrogant smirk from Amelia, every drone video I'd taken, the threats, even the dead crow in the mailbox. When I finished, Patricia looked at me and said softly, "This isn't just a property dispute. It's a story about power and the cost of standing up to it." For 90 minutes, we filmed inside the house outside by the walnut stumps, even down the gravel road where I first saw them all. She asked if I regretted letting them build. Not a second, I said. They spent $47 million proving how stupid greed can be. She smiled. That's the quote. By the end of the interview, she had enough material for a full investigative segment. She promised it would air on January 28th, 1 week before the final trial. "Get ready," she said, as they packed up their gear. "After it airs, your phone won't stop ringing." Rebecca was thrilled. "Perfect timing," she said. "The public will turn before the judge even gavels in." But Preston and Amelia weren't idle. As Rebecca dug deeper, we uncovered proof they'd tried to buy silence. The title company involved in the Riverside deal had received a $60,000 consulting payment from Ridgeline Capital Preston's LLC. The paper trail was thin but real. Meanwhile, Rebecca subpoenaed 5 former contractors from the HOA board. One of them cracked almost immediately. They told us the land was clear, he confessed during deposition, said the owner was deceased. "We just followed orders." Rebecca leaned forward. "And who gave those orders, Amelia?" he said. "Always Amelia. That was the nail we needed." January arrived cold and brittle. I tried to keep my routine normal coffee at dawn walks by the frozen pond, quiet evenings with Emma and David. But inside I was restless. Every day felt like the pause before thunder. Then on the evening of January 28th, the story aired. The segment opened with sweeping drone footage of Riverside Plaza, shimmering lights over empty parking lots, the camera gliding across the glittering facade. Patricia's voiceover cut through. "A $47 million shopping mall stands silent tonight, caught in a legal nightmare." Court documents reveal that the land beneath Riverside Plaza never belonged to the developers who built it. Then came my interview. I appeared on screen standing by the walnut stumps. My uncle paid for this land with 40 years of sweat. They paved it over in 6 months. I'm not asking for vengeance, I'm asking for honesty. The piece was devastating. It showed the original deeds, the email from Preston, the timeline of the fraud and interviews with other victims of the Davises' schemes. It even revealed that Preston had donated $75,000 to a county commissioner's re-election campaign right before the zoning approval. When the segment ended, I sat on the couch holding an unopened beer, staring at the TV in silence. My phone started vibrating, texts, calls, emails. Emma called first, voice shaking. "Dad, it's everywhere, you're trending," David shouted through the speaker. "They're done. Dad, you just killed their whole reputation." I smiled faintly. "We didn't kill it," I said. "They did." An email popped up from my boss at the firm. "We're proud of you, Charles. Come back Monday." For a brief, fragile moment, I felt peace. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. The message read, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life. No name, no number traceable." I froze. My chest tightened. For a second, I felt that same dread from months ago, the night someone left the Crow. I immediately called Rebecca. She answered on the first ring. I saw the segment. "You were perfect." "I just got a threat," I said. "Blocked number." "Text or call text. Forward it to me, then lock your doors. Don't go anywhere alone. You're too valuable now. They're scared." She paused, then added, "That's how you know we're winning." That night, sleep refused to come. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every flicker of headlights outside made my hand inch toward the bat by the nightstand. I wasn't afraid for myself anymore, but for Emma, for David, for the quiet life they deserved. By morning, Rebecca called again. "Good news, the FBI fraud unit just contacted me." Patricia's report triggered a review of Ridgeline Capital's finances. "If we get cooperation from the title company, we can push for federal prosecution." I felt the weight lift from my chest, replaced by a cold, fierce calm. "Then let's finish it," I said. Rebecca's tone turned grim. "We will. But Charles, be careful. The Davises have lost everything except pride. That makes them dangerous. I hung up and looked toward the horizon where the mall shimmered under winter sunlight, empty and waiting. The reckoning had begun, and this time it wasn't just about my land. It was about every family they'd ever stolen, from every quiet homeowner they'd bullied into silence. The Davises had built their fortune on deceit. Now they'd learn what it felt like to have the ground pulled out from beneath them, one legal motion at a time. The courtroom that day felt like the eye of a storm. People packed the benches, shop owners who had signed leases, neighbors who once cheered Amelia's rallies, reporters with notepads and phones, and 2 rows of lawyers for the Davises looking pale and small. My hands barely trembled as Rebecca slid me a fresh copy of the exhibit list, email threads, bank transfers, deposition transcripts, Patricia's broadcast packet, and that smoking gun title company memo. Preston sat with his jaw clenched, so tight the vein in his temple pulsed. Amelia's face was pale mascara cracking at the corners. The confident mask she wore for gala photos had melted under the flood of evidence. When the bailiff called the room to order, I felt the gravity in the oak benches, like the county itself, was leaning in to hear what truth would say. Rebecca opened like a storm. She didn't plead. She narrated. She laid out with cold surgical clarity a decade-long pattern shell LLCs formed by Ridgeline Capital, permissive county officials coaxed by campaign donations, doctored parcel IDs to manufacture ambiguity, and a repeat playbook of building fast, leasing faster, and threatening homeowners into silence. She ran deposition clips where Amelia's former contractor confessed on the record that the board was told the land was cleared by Ridgeline execs. She played a recorded voicemail where Preston laughed about Aspen and how quickly they moved the product. Then she showed the title company's internal memo admitting the $60,000 payment labeled consulting that cleared approvals. The clerk who'd signed off on a permit sat red-faced on the stand, stuttering about pressure and donations. The jurors, if a jury had been seated, would have nodded in horror. Here, instead of whispers, there were gasps. At one point, Reverend Morales, a small business owner, and one of the tenants rose to speak for himself and the others. "We leased in good faith," he said, voice trembling. "We put down deposits, we hired staff, we bought inventory. We trusted this community. We are not the ones who committed fraud. We are its victims." Heads in the room bobbed. Some eyes locked on Amelia, others on me as if searching for a villain. I felt both the heat of accusation and the coolness of vindication. Preston's defense tried to paint it all as administrative error and rogue employees. But the litany of documents, emails with dates and dollar amounts, phone records matching the deposition timeline, and the whistleblower's testimony from the Aspen deal made the defense crumble under its own weight. You could see the calculations in their faces. How do you spin deliberate deceit into an honest mistake when the records scream intent? Late in the afternoon, Rebecca rested and turned to me. "Your testimony," she said softly. "Tell them who you are and why this matters." I stood up, cleared my throat, and told the story from the walnut grove, about the summers I spent with Uncle Raymond, about the note taped to a mason jar on the kitchen shelf, about paying taxes like a rhythm year after year. I kept my voice steady but honest, letting the emotion anchor the facts. I told them about the little things Amelia never considered important, the footprints by the pond, the draft ledger with my uncle's signature, the smell of coffee left in the workshop. After my testimony, Rebecca brought the big one, the video compilation of Amelia's public speeches. The gala footage where she crowed about legacy contrasted with the email where she and Preston discussed moving fast to create confusion. It was an ugly juxtaposition. In the gallery shop, owners clutched each other. Some cried. When closing arguments came, Rebecca asked the judge for more than just a civil remedy. "Your Honor," she said, voice low and fierce, "this was organized, methodical theft by people who used the veneer of community to commit private fraud. We move for disgorgement punitive damages, and to refer the matter for criminal investigation under RICO and related statutes." The judge took her words with a gravity that left the defendants pale. Judge Ramirez did not take long. Her chambers were as precise as her gavel. The written opinion, 16 pages of legal clarity, came the next morning like a thunderbolt. She found that the Davises and Ridgeline had engaged in a pattern of intentional fraud, falsified parcel representations, improper payments to a title official, and directed policies to create artificial confusion. The court awarded me full title to the disputed parcel, ordered immediate transfer of property rights, and assessed damages $5.8 million for emotional distress, loss of use, and punitive damages designed to deter this kind of scheme. She also ordered that Ridgeline Capital and the Davises pay my legal fees $78,000 to Rebecca's firm and placed a hold on their assets pending restitution. More importantly, she referred the file to the U.S. Attorney's Office for potential RICO and fraud prosecution. It was a phrase that made Preston go ash white. Outside the courthouse, the press swarmed. Cameras flashed like a swarm of angry insects. 100 voices demanded my reaction. I felt weary, not triumphant. Victory was not a party. It was a settling of accounts. I told the cameras, this isn't about money. It's about the principle. Land is more than a ledger. It's memory, sweat, and legacy. Weeks later, federal prosecutors filed charges. Preston faced multiple counts of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The title company executive pleaded guilty to accepting bribes. Amelia, in a plea negotiation, admitted to willful negligence in a lesser count and agreed to restitution of $650, 0,000, 2 years of supervised release, and a permanent ban from serving in any development or HOA leadership in Colorado. The criminal calendar rolled on. Preston's indictment expanded into a full federal case. Ridgeline Capital dissolved within a month. Their assets were seized and placed into receivership. Lenders called loans. Investors sued back. The Davises lost their house, their reputations, and much of their fortune. The people they duped, shopkeepers and residents, settled into mediation and restitution processes. My name appeared in local papers, followed by words like vindicated and justice. It felt surreal, but I didn't keep the money. I called a meeting in the old community center with Rebecca, Patricia, the tenants, and the town council. We set up the Raymond Trust, a nonprofit holding the mall's commercial title and trust for the tenants and for community benefit. Each shop owner was given the option to buy their unit at cost or have rights transferred at no profit. A scholarship fund of $12,000 per year was established for students studying architecture and forestry, Uncle Raymond's two loves. We planted a memorial walnut tree near the plaza and carved his initials on a plaque. On opening day, months after the court's order, the plaza reopened, not as Riverside Plaza, but as Walker Square, a name that made Amelia's supporters scoff, but made the community cry. The tenants returned, customers streamed in, and the place hummed with honest commerce. Amelia watched from the sidewalk, now working a part-time cashier job at one of the smaller shops, humble, contrite, and stripped of power. She avoided my gaze. Standing in the center of the square, watching the children skate past the fountain under a banner that read, "Built on Justice," I felt a strange peace. The oak benches bore the weight of conversations, laughter, and the occasional heated debate about who painted the best mural. The suits and the snarls had been replaced by gardeners, bakers, and the old man who ran the bookshop. At night, I would walk back to the ridge where my uncle's stumps remained. I reminded myself that this had never been about revenge for its own sake. It was about restoring what was taken, making amends for those who had been trampled, and ensuring that greedy men could not hide behind HOA letters and flashy press releases. When I taped Uncle Raymond's note back onto the mason jar and placed it in my kitchen, I allowed myself a small grin. Don't let them take what we built with honest sweat. He was right. We had not only taken it back, we'd turned it into something better. In the years that followed, Patricia won another Emmy for her investigative piece. Preston's trial became a cautionary tale in law schools. Amelia's name drifted into gossip columns and then faded. And Walker Square stood safe, public, and owned by the community it was always meant to serve. As I closed the gate of my little property one evening, watching the plaza lights blink like distant stars, I felt the kind of exhausted satisfaction that has nothing to do with vengeance and everything to do with justice done. The walnut tree still stands taller than when I first came home, and somewhere in its rings are the summers my uncle sweated for. It felt right. I learned the hard way that righteous anger is only useful when paired with patience, paperwork, and people who know how to read both. You don't win by yelling the loudest, you win by proving the truth day after day. If there's a lesson here, it's simple. Keep your records, pay your taxes, and never underestimate the power of quiet persistence. Justice can be slow, but when it arrives, it rebuilds more than what was lost. It heals the community and creates something lasting. Have you ever faced an HOA nightmare or felt crushed by a system built to favor the loudest? Share your story in the comments. If this resonated, subscribe for more HOA stories where the little guy fights back and sometimes wins.